Now, this is actually going to be a follow-up from my discussion video last week, where I brought up the topic of Reylo and whether or not this is a good story idea, Rey and Kylo Ren possibly falling for each other, that is, or if it sends the wrong kind of message for Rey to forgive and then fall for him considering what he's already done to her. And even though I didn't get a chance to respond to as many comments as I would have liked to on this particular video, which I do apologize for, I did read them all, and as expected, there were people who felt strongly about this issue both ways. However, most of our top voted comments were from those in favor of Reylo happening, with our top comment coming from Naha, who said, "I don't necessarily know about romantic Reylo per se, but I think Reylo could send a powerful message. Rey and Kylo are lonely, frustrated, and misunderstood in a lot of ways. Rey has never really known companionship, especially with another Force user. She was forced to live almost her entire life so far in solitude and isolation. Kylo, on the other hand, was manipulated away from the security of a loving family into a faction that he could never explicitly internalize. I think it would send a powerful message to create a special bond between these two, and the bond would be more meaningful if it wasn't defaulted to a familial one." And this is something I absolutely agree with, and something I touched on quite a bit in my initial video. There really has to be some type of dynamic relationship here, even if it isn't a straight up romantic one, which I don't think it has to be compelling. But these characters do have a lot in common, and I think making it more than just about a family connection would be far more interesting. And one way or the other, I just can't see this trilogy being about something as simple as two people, Kylo and Rey, who hate each other and are now training to destroy each other. I mean, that would make it utterly silly in comparison to the big duels at the end of the previous trilogies, with Luke facing and trying to save his father, and Obi-Wan forced to try and destroy someone he loves and thinks of as a brother. In other words, there needs to be more to that eventual last duel between Kylo and Rey, assuming of course that's how this trilogy ends, than just being about vengeance. Then of course there were those, and this charge was led by my friend Janet Rubio, who took issues with me using the word violate when bringing up what Kylo Ren did to Rey in the movie. And yes, perhaps violate was a poorly chosen word on my part, since it does all too often have a physical or sexual connotation to it, and Kylo certainly didn't physically violate her. Nevertheless, he did take her prisoner and mind probe her in the movie. But there's the key word in my opinion, movie, and this is a movie called Star Wars, not Star Friendship and political correctness where everything is happy and fair. In other words, if you're going to watch a movie about war, and one rated PG-13, you should expect some level of violence and wrongdoing in it, if you will. And by no means am I or would I condone this type of behavior in the real world, but again, this is a movie. It should be meant to entertain us, not give us life lessons we should be learning elsewhere. And, as Dog-Eared Ticket Stub points out, women aren't dumb. If Reylo happened, I don't think we'd suddenly see a drastic increase in women dating psychopathic killers. And along those same lines, there are those that actually find it quite offensive that there is this belief that women need to be protected from this story in the first place, and that they would automatically fall prey to these ideas if they watched the movie. Whereas, if the roles were reversed and Rey was a man and Kylo was a woman, there wouldn't be any discussion at all right now. And one of my personal top comments actually touches on the hypocrisy of this double standard quite a bit, and much, much more. And even though I'm not going to read the whole thing right now, I encourage you to pause it and read it for yourself, because there are a ton of great points here. And one of them is about forgiveness. And as Daniel Wright put it so simply, yet so perfectly, one thing about Star Wars, redemption's at the core. And that is absolutely right, because the first 6 episodes of the Star Wars saga are about the rise, fall, and then redemption of Anakin Skywalker. And though we could certainly debate whether or not he deserves that redemption he ultimately gets, very few people actually bring it up or seem to have any real issue with it. And let's not forget that among the many of Vader or Anakin's evil acts, there is the fact that he slaughtered a room full of children in Revenge of the Sith. Still, moral and ethical issues aside for a moment, there is still the question if Reylo would actually make a good story or not, and as Wayne Reacts says, "No, just no. Movies with heroines falling for villains and monsters has been done to death. Leave it to the teen novel adaptations. 50 Shades of Grey Jedi would be a step too far." And I can certainly understand that stance. To oversimplify it here, girls falling for the bad boys is one of the oldest stories in the book, and one that Star Wars has pretty much done before with Han and Leia, though by no means is Han the monster that his son will turn out to be. Still, he was no saint. Though the funny thing is, I'm not sure I've ever heard anyone take issues with the Han-Leia relationship. Anyway, I also certainly get the point that a lot of people made that Kylo has done too much to Rey. Maybe not so much that he can't be forgiven, but too much for her to ever fall in love with him. And I wouldn't disagree with those that say that. Personally though, I'm neither for nor against Relo. If it's done brilliantly, then by all means. If not, then I obviously don't want it. Because, as I've said, I think it will happen on some level, though I don't know if it'll be a romantic one. And to be honest here, I'm just for them telling a good story, minus the agenda or worry about who might get offended. Because it seems in this day and age, someone always gets offended or upset that a movie is sending the wrong message. But here's the thing, I don't need or want Star Wars teaching me the difference between right and wrong, not that I'm still young and impressionable enough that it matters. Simply put, I watch it to be entertained, as you probably do. However, there are certainly kids out there who are impressionable, but I don't think Lucasfilm and Disney have any type of responsibility to teach those kids moral lessons, no more than any other company out there who makes movies and provides entertainment. That responsibility should fall upon parents, teachers, and so on, not giant corporations. And yes, I realize this isn't a perfect world, and not every child has a positive influence in their lives. But again, a giant corporation does not and should not make a good substitute. And when you really think about it here, I'm not so sure that, traditionally, Star Wars has been a place to learn moral lessons. Take Luke Skywalker, for example, the hero of the original trilogy. You might think he's a great role model, but he is, in a sense, a mass murderer. He did, after all, blow up the first Death Star, and played a part in blowing up the second one. Not to mention, he fired the shot that blew up Jabba's sail barge. And not everyone on that sail barge was evil and deserved it, certainly not the Max Rebo band. Nor did everyone on those Death Stars deserve what they got either. But again, this is Star Wars, and unsavory things are done even by the best of us in times of war out of necessity, and to not show the darker sides of war, and in turn human nature, would turn these into boring stories that no one watched. It is the exploration of the abstract ideas of good and evil that makes Star Wars so damn good, or at least one of the things. It would also make it far less dramatic when these characters rise above the sins of their past and find redemption, even if it's just in the eyes of their son. Now, personally, I don't have a problem with Rey finding a way to forgive Kylo Ren for all that he's done to her, which includes killing Han Solo right in front of her, the closest thing she's ever had to a father. And there's two reasons for that. First, it is a movie. Second, as many brought up, forgiveness is powerful and challenging, and says a lot about the person willing to give it. Rey forgiving Kylo Ren does not make her weak, it makes her stronger. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to once again take to the comments and tell me what you think, though there will be no follow-up video this time. Nevertheless, leave your thoughts below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.